good evening, and welcome to your bedtime story. Tonight is a night for softening, for letting go of the day behind you and allowing the world to settle just a little more quietly around you. Before the story begins, you can let yourself arrive here fully. Nothing to achieve, nothing to solve, nothing to keep track of. And because this is a bedtime story, your mind already knows what comes next. You are here to settle, to soften, and to let yourself drift naturally toward rest. Not because you try to, but because your mind cannot help it. The moment your thoughts begin to loosen, the moment they begin to wander, the rest follows naturally. You may hear my voice now, guiding you into rest. Later, another voice will take over, carrying the tale itself. And when that handover comes, you will notice, perhaps consciously, perhaps only faintly, that you are already deeper, already softer, already closer to sleep. Even when you hear the new voice, you may still sense me in the background. Gentle whispers, subtle currents of sound that keep guiding you downward, reminding your body that it is safe to release, safe to drop, safe to sleep. For now, simply settle. Feel the way your weight meets the mattress below you. Feel the quiet rhythm of your own breathing. You do not need to change it, just notice the rise and the fall and the way your body responds, all on its own. And as you notice that rhythm, you may also notice something else. The simple, quiet truth that with each exhale, something lets go. A thought loosens, a tension dissolves, a fragment of the day drifts away. It is not something you do, it simply happens, inevitably. Soon you will hear a tale of young Zaphod Beeblebrox, long before the guide, long before the chaos you might remember. Younger, yes, yet still unmistakably himself. A short story filled with oddities and wonders, but one you do not have to follow closely. In fact, the less you try to follow, the easier it becomes for sleep to arrive. You may stay with it for a while, or float away from it almost immediately. And whichever happens will be exactly the right thing. Either way, the story will hold itself together without you. You can visit its edges for a moment, and then slide gently away, following whatever quiet pathway your mind chooses. You can always hear the rest another time. Stories wait. Sleep does not. As I speak, you may sense a soft settling, a gentle shift towards something warm, comforting, and calm. Not because you try to, but because your body already knows how to move toward rest. You might notice the spaces between words, between thoughts, widening just enough for your mind to begin floating lightly among them. There is a moment just before sleep when everything loosens and your thoughts drift just below the surface of dreaming. You may feel that now, or very soon, as your mind leans naturally in that direction. You will hear soft soundscapes surrounding the story, an ambience, spacious echoes, shifting layers of gentle voices lingering at the edges of awareness. These sounds support you, steady you, and invite you into deeper ease. You might not catch every word in those background voices, and you do not need to. They are there to remind you quietly, subtly, inevitably, that it is safe to release, safe to drift, safe to let the night carry you exactly where you need to go. And if at any moment your body decides it is ready to sleep, you can simply follow that instinct. You will not miss anything important. You will not lose your place. The story will take care of itself. And tomorrow, if you wake up without knowing how it ended, that will mean everything worked exactly as it should. This story is meant to be entered lightly, and left behind the moment, your mind begins to soften and dissolve into rest. So, as the narration shifts and the story prepares to begin, you can let your thoughts open and loosen and drift, listening, fading, floating. And whenever you are ready, whether now or in a few minutes, you may let the story carry you only as far as you wish, before sleep inevitably carries you the rest of the way. Now, the tale awaits. I will hand you over gently, and I will remain softly, quietly in the background, guiding you down, helping you drift, helping you fall asleep.
Young Zaphod plays it safe. A large flying craft moved swiftly across the surface of an astoundingly beautiful sea. From mid-morning onward, it plied back and forth in great widening arcs, and at last attracted the attention of the local islanders, a peaceful, seafood-loving people who gathered on the beach and squinted up into the blinding sun, trying to see what was there. Any sophisticated, knowledgeable person who had knocked about, seen a few things, would probably have remarked on how much the craft looked like a filing cabinet, a large and recently burgled filing cabinet lying on its back with its drawers in the air and flying. The islanders, whose experience was of a different kind, were instead struck by how little it looked like a lobster. They chatted excitedly about its total lack of claws, its stiff, unbendy back, and the fact that it seemed to experience the greatest difficulty staying on the ground. This last feature seemed particularly funny to them. They jumped up and down on the spot a lot to demonstrate to the stupid thing that they themselves found staying on the ground the easiest thing in the world. But soon this entertainment began to pall for them. After all, since it was perfectly clear to them that the thing was not a lobster, and since their world was blessed with an abundance of things that were lobsters, a good half a dozen of which were now marching succulently up the beach towards them, they saw no reason to waste any more time on the thing and decided instead to adjourn immediately for a late lobster lunch. At that exact moment, the craft stopped suddenly in mid-air, then upended itself and plunged headlong into the ocean with a great crash of spray that sent the islanders shouting into the trees. When they re-emerged nervously a few minutes later, all they were able to see was a smoothly scarred circle of water and a few gulping bubbles. "That's odd," they said to each other between mouthfuls of the best lobster to be had anywhere in the Western Galaxy. "That's the second time that's happened in a year." The craft that wasn't a lobster dived directly to a depth of 200 feet and hung there in the heavy blueness while vast masses of water swayed about it. High above, where the water was magically clear, a brilliant formation of fish flashed away. Below, where the light had difficulty reaching, the color of the water sank to a dark and savage blue. Here at 200 feet, the sun streamed feebly. A large, silk-skinned sea mammal rolled idly by, inspecting the craft with a kind of half-interest, as if it had half expected to find something of this kind round about here, and then it slid on up and away towards the rippling light. The craft waited here for a minute or two, taking readings, and then descended another 100 feet. At this depth, it was becoming seriously dark. After a moment or two, the internal lights of the craft shut down, and in the second or so that passed before the main external beams suddenly stabbed out, the only visible light came from a small, hazily illuminated pink sign that read, "The Beeblebrox Salvage and Really Wild Stuff Corporation." The huge beams switched downwards, catching a vast shoal of silver fish, which swiveled away in silent panic. In the dim control room that extended in a broad bow from the craft's blunt prow, 4 heads were gathered around a computer display that was analysing the very, very faint and intermittent signals that were emanating from deep on the seabed. "That's it," said the owner of one of the heads finally. "Can we be quite sure?" said the owner of another of the heads. "100% positive," replied the owner of the first head. "You're 100% positive that the ship which has crashed on the bottom of this ocean is the ship which you said you were 100% positive could 100% positively never crash?" said the owner of the 2 remaining heads. "Hey!" He put up 2 of his hands. "I'm only asking." The 2 officials from the Safety and Civil Reassurance Administration responded to this with a very cold stare, but the man with the odd, or rather the even number of heads, missed it. He flung himself back on the pilot couch, opened a couple of beers, one for himself and the other also for himself, stuck his feet on the console and said, "Hey baby," through the ultraglass at a passing fish. "Mr. Beeblebrox," began the shorter and less reassuring of the 2 officials in a low voice. "Yep," said Zaphod, rapping a suddenly empty can down on some of the more sensitive instruments. "You ready to dive? Let's go!" "Mr. Beeblebrox, let us make one thing perfectly clear." "Yeah, let's," said Zaphod. "How about this for a start? Why don't you just tell me what's really on this ship?" "We have told you," said the official. "Byproducts." Zaphod exchanged weary glances with himself. "Byproducts?" he said. "Byproducts of what?" "Processes," said the official. "What processes?" "Processes that are perfectly safe." "Santa's Arquana Zoostra!" exclaimed both of Zaphod's head in chorus. "So safe that you have to build a Zarking fortress ship to take the byproducts to the nearest black hole and tip them in? Only it doesn't get there because the pilot does a detour, is this right, to pick up some lobster? Okay, so the guy's cool, but I mean, own up, this is barking time, this is major lunch, this is stool approaching critical mass, this is total vocabulary failure." "Shut up!" his right head yelled at his left. "We're flanging!" He got a good calming grip on the remaining beer can. "Listen, guys," he resumed after a moment's peace and contemplation. The 2 officials had said nothing. Conversation at this level was not something to which they felt they could aspire. "I just want to know," insisted Zaphod, "what you're getting me into here." He stabbed a finger at the intermittent readings trickling over the computer screen. They meant nothing to him, but he didn't like the look of them at all. They were all squiggly, with lots of long numbers and things. "It's breaking up, is that it?" he shouted. "It's got a hold full of epsilonic radiating aorist rods or something that'll fry this whole space sector for zillions of years back, and it's breaking up? Is that the story? Is that what we're going down to find? Am I going to come out of that wreck with even more heads?" "It cannot possibly be a wreck, Mr. Beeblebrox," insisted the official. "The ship is guaranteed to be perfectly safe. It cannot possibly break up." "Then why are you so keen to go and look at it?" "We like to look at things that are perfectly safe." "Phew!" "Mr. Beeblebrox," said the official patiently, "may I remind you that you have a job to do?" "Yeah. Well, maybe I don't feel so keen on doing it all of a sudden." "What do you think I am? Completely without any moral whatsits? What are they called, those moral things? Scruples? Scruples, thank you. Whatsoever? Well, The two officials waited calmly. They coughed slightly to help pass the time. Zaphod sighed a "what is the world coming to" sort of sigh to absolve himself from all blame, and swung himself around in his seat. "Ship!" he called. "Yep," said the ship. "Do what I do." The ship thought about this for a few milliseconds, and then, after double-checking all the seals on its heavy-duty bulkheads, it began slowly, inexorably, in the hazy blaze of its lights, to sink to the lowest depths. 500 feet, 1,000, 2,000. Here, at a pressure of nearly 70 atmospheres, in the chilling depths where no light reaches, nature keeps its most heated imaginings. 2-foot-long nightmares loomed wildly into the bleaching light, yawned, and vanished back into the blackness. 2,500 feet. At the dim edges of the ship's lights, guilty secrets flitted by with their eyes on stalks. Gradually, the topography of the distantly approaching ocean bed resolved with greater and greater clarity on the computer displays, until at last a shape could be made out that was separate and distinct from its surroundings. It was like a huge, lopsided, cylindrical fortress that widened sharply halfway along its length to accommodate the heavy ultraplating with which the crucial storage holds were clad, and which were supposed by its builders to have made this the most secure and impregnable spaceship ever built. Before launch, the material structure of this section had been battered, rammed, blasted, and subjected to every assault its builders knew it could withstand, in order to demonstrate that it could withstand them. The tense silence in the cockpit tightened perceptibly as it became clear that it was this section that had broken rather neatly in two. "In fact, it's perfectly safe," said one of the officials. "It's built so that even if the ship does break up, the storage holds cannot possibly be breached." 3,825 feet. 4 high-pressure smart suits moved slowly out of the open hatchway of the salvage craft and waded through the barrage of its lights towards the monstrous shape that loomed darkly out of the sea night. They moved with a sort of clumsy grace, near weightless, though weighed on by a world of water. With his right-hand head, Zaphod peered up into the black immensities above him, and for a moment his mind sang with a silent roar of horror. He glanced to his left and was relieved to see that his other head was busy watching the Brockian Ultra Cricket broadcasts on the helmet vid without concern. Slightly behind him to his left walked the 2 officials from the Safety and Civil Reassurance Administration, and slightly in front of him, to his right, walked the empty suit, carrying their implements and testing the way for them. They passed the huge rift in the broken-backed starship billion-year bunker and played their flashlights up into it. Mangled machinery loomed between torn and twisted bulkheads 2 feet thick. A family of large transparent eels lived in there now and seemed to like it. The empty suit preceded them along the length of the ship's gigantic murky hull, trying the airlocks. The third one it tested ground open uneasily. They crowded inside it and waited for several long minutes while the pump mechanisms dealt with the hideous pressure that the ocean exerted, and slowly replaced it with an equally hideous pressure of air and inert gases. At last, the inner door slid open and they were admitted to the dark outer holding area of the starship billion-year bunker. Several more high-security titano-hull doors had to be passed through, each of which the officials opened with a selection of quark keys. Soon, they were so deep within the heavy security fields that the Ultra Cricket broadcasts were beginning to fade, and Zaphod had to switch to one of the rock video stations, since there was nowhere that they were not able to reach. A final doorway slid open and they emerged into a large sepulchral space. Zaphod played his flashlight against the opposite wall, and it fell full on a wild-eyed, screaming face. Zaphod screamed a diminished fifth himself, dropped his light, and sat heavily on the floor, or rather, on a body that had been lying there undisturbed for around 6 months. And that reacted to being sat on by exploding with great violence. Zaphod wondered what to do about all this, and after a brief but hectic internal debate, decided that passing out would be the very thing. He came to a few minutes later and pretended not to know who he was, where he was, or how he had got there, but was not able to convince anybody. He then pretended that his memory suddenly returned with a rush, and that the shock caused him to pass out again. But he was helped unwillingly to his feet by the empty suit, which he was beginning to take a serious dislike to, and forced to come to terms with his surroundings. They were dimly and fitfully lit, and unpleasant in a number of respects, the most obvious of which was the colourful arrangement of parts of the ship's late lamented navigation officer over the floor, walls and ceiling, and especially over the lower half of his, Zaphod's, suit. The effect of this was so astoundingly nasty that we shall not be referring to it again at any point in this narrative, other than to record briefly the fact that it caused Zaphod to throw up inside his suit, which he therefore removed and swapped after suitable headgear modifications with the empty one. Unfortunately, the stench of the fetid air in the ship, followed by the sight of his own suit walking around casually draped in rotten intestines, was enough to make him throw up in the other suit as well, which was a problem that he and the suit would simply have to live with. There, all done, no more nastiness. At least, no more of that particular nastiness. The owner of the screaming face had calmed down very slightly now and was bubbling away incoherently in a large tank of yellow liquid, an emergency suspension tank.
"It was crazy," he babbled. "Crazy! I told him we could always try the lobster on the way back, but he was crazy, obsessed. Do you ever get like that about lobster? Because I don't. Seems to me it's all rubbery and fiddly to eat and not that much taste. Well, I mean, is there? I infinitely prefer scallops and said so. Oh, Zarquan, I said so."
Zaphod stared at this extraordinary apparition, flailing in its tank. The man was attached to all kinds of life support tubes, and his voice was bubbling out of the speakers that echoed insanely round the ship, returning as haunting echoes from deep and distant corridors.
"That was where I went wrong," the madman yelled. "I actually said that I preferred scallops, and he said it was because I hadn't had real lobster like they did where his ancestors came from, which was here, and he'd prove it. He said it was no problem. He said the lobster here was worth a whole journey, let alone the small diversion it would take to get here, and he swore he could handle the ship in the atmosphere, but it was madness! Madness!"
He screamed and paused with his eyes rolling as if the word had rung some kind of bell in his mind.
"The ship went right out of control. I couldn't believe what we were doing, and just to prove a point about lobster, which is really so overrated as a food. I'm sorry to go on about lobsters so much, I'll try and stop in a minute, but they've been on my mind so much for the months I've been in this tank. Can you imagine what it's like to be stuck in a ship with the same guys for months eating junk food, when all one guy will talk about is lobster, and then spend 6 months floating by yourself in a tank thinking about it? I promise I will try and shut up about the lobsters, I really will. Lobsters, lobsters, lobsters! Enough! I think I'm the only survivor. I'm the only one who managed to get to an emergency tank before we went down. I sent out the Mayday and then we hit. It's a disaster, isn't it? A total disaster, and all because the guy liked lobsters. How much sense am I making? It's really hard for me to tell."
He gazed at them beseechingly, and his mind seemed to sway slowly back down to earth like a falling leaf. He blinked and looked at them oddly, like a monkey peering at a strange fish. He scrabbled curiously with his wrinkled-up fingers at the glass side of the tank. Tiny, thick yellow bubbles loosened themselves from his mouth and nose, caught briefly in his squab of hair, and strayed on upwards.
"Oh, Zarquan! Oh, heavens!"
he mumbled pathetically to himself.
"I've been found! I've been rescued!"
"Well," said one of the officials, briskly, "you've been found at least." He strode over to the main computer bank in the middle of the chamber and started checking quickly through the ship's main monitor circuits for damage reports. "The airist rod chambers are intact," he said. "Holy dingoes doos," snarled Zaphod. "There are airist rods on board?" Airist rods were devices used in a now happily abandoned form of energy production. When the hunt for new sources of energy had at one point got particularly frantic, one bright young chap suddenly spotted that one place which had never used up all its available energy was the past. And with the sudden rush of blood to his head that such insights tend to induce, he invented a way of mining it that very same night. And within a year, huge tracts of the past were being drained of all their energy and simply wasting away. Those who claimed that the past should be left unspoilt were accused of indulging in an extremely expensive form of sentimentality. The past provided a very cheap, plentiful and clean source of energy. There could always be a few natural past reserves set up if anyone wanted to pay for their upkeep. And as for the claim that draining the past impoverished the present, well, maybe it did slightly, but the effects were immeasurable and you really had to keep a sense of proportion. It was only when it was realized that the present really was being impoverished and that the reason for it was that those selfish, plundering, wastrel bastards up in the future were doing exactly the same thing that everyone realized that every single enriched rod and the terrible secret of how they were made would have to be utterly and forever destroyed. They claimed it was for the sake of their grandparents and grandchildren, but it was of course for the sake of their grandparents' grandchildren and their grandchildren's grandparents. The official from the Safety and Civil Reassurance Administration gave a dismissive shrug. "They're perfectly safe," he said. He glanced up at Zaphod and suddenly said with uncharacteristic frankness, "There's worse than that on board. At least," he added, tapping at one of the computer screens, "I hope it's on board." The other official rounded on him sharply. "What the hell do you think you're saying?" he snapped. The first shrugged again. He said, "It doesn't matter. He can say what he likes. No one would believe him. It's why we chose to use him rather than do anything official, isn't it? The more wild the story he tells, the more it'll sound like he's some hippie adventurer making it up. He can even say we said this, and it'll make him sound like a paranoid." He smiled pleasantly at Zaphod, who was seething in a suit full of sick. "You may accompany us," he told him, "if you wish." "You see," said the official, examining the ultra-titanium outer seals of the enriched rod hold, "perfectly secure, perfectly safe." He said the same thing as they passed holds containing chemical weapons so powerful that a teaspoonful could fatally infect an entire planet. He said the same thing as they passed holds containing zeta-active compounds so powerful that a teaspoonful could blow up a whole planet. He said the same thing as they passed holds containing theta-active compounds so powerful that a teaspoonful could irradiate a whole planet. "I'm glad I'm not a planet," muttered Zaphod. "You'd have nothing to fear," assured the official from the Safety and Civil Reassurance Administration. "Planets are very safe, provided," he added, and paused. They were approaching the hold, nearest to the point where the back of the Starship billion-year bunker was broken. The corridor here was twisted and deformed, and the floor was damp and sticky in patches. "Ho-hum," he said. "Ho, very much hum." "What's in this hold?" demanded Zaphod. "Byproducts," said the official, clamming up again. "Byproducts?" insisted Zaphod quietly. "Of what?" Neither official answered. Instead, they examined the whole door very carefully and saw that its seals were twisted apart by the forces that had deformed the whole corridor. One of them touched the door lightly. It swung open to his touch. There was darkness inside, with just a couple of dim yellow lights deep within it. "Of what?" hissed Zaphod. The leading official turned to the other. "There's an escape capsule," he said, "that the crew were to use to abandon ship before jettisoning it into the black hole," he said. "I think it would be good to know that it's still there." The other official nodded and left without a word. The first official quietly beckoned Zaphod in. The large dim yellow lights glowed about 20 feet from them. "The reason," he said quietly, "why everything else in this ship is, I maintain, safe, is that no one is really crazy enough to use them. No one. At least no one that crazy would ever get near them. Anyone that mad or dangerous rings very deep alarm bells. People may be stupid, but they're not that stupid." "Byproducts," hissed Zaphod again. He had to hiss in order that his voice shouldn't be heard to tremble. "Of what?" Designer people." "What?" "The Sirius Cybernetics Corporation were awarded a huge research grant to design and produce synthetic personalities to order. The results were uniformly disastrous. All the people and personalities turned out to be amalgams of characteristics which simply could not coexist in naturally occurring life forms. Most of them were just poor, pathetic misfits, but some were deeply, deeply dangerous. Dangerous because they didn't ring alarm bells in other people. They could walk through situations the way that ghosts walk through walls because no one spotted the danger. The most dangerous of all were 3 identical ones. They were put in this hold to be blasted with this ship right out of this universe. They're not evil, in fact they're rather simple and charming, but they are the most dangerous creatures that ever lived, because there is nothing they will not do if allowed, and nothing they will not be allowed to do." Zaphod looked at the dim yellow lights, the 2 dim yellow lights. As his eyes became accustomed to the light, he saw that the 2 lights framed a third space where something was broken. Wet, sticky patches gleamed dully on the floor. Zaphod and the official walked cautiously toward the light. At that moment, 4 words came crashing into the helmet headsets from the other official. "The capsule has gone," he said tersely. "Trace it," snapped Zaphod's companion. "Find exactly where it has gone. We must know where it has gone." Zaphod approached the 2 remaining tanks. A quick glance showed him that each contained an identical floating body. He examined one more carefully. The body, that of an elderly man, was floating in a thick yellow liquid. The man was kindly looking, with lots of pleasant laugh lines around his face. His hair seemed unnaturally thick and dark for someone of his age, and his right hand seemed continually to be weaving forward and back, up and down, as if shaking hands with an endless succession of unseen ghosts. He smiled genially, babbled and burbled like a half-sleeping baby, and occasionally seemed to rock very slightly with little tremors of laughter, as if he just told himself a joke he hadn't heard before or didn't remember properly. Waving, smiling, chortling, with little yellow bubbles beading on his lips, he seemed to inhabit a distant world of simple dreams. Another terse message suddenly came through his helmet headset. The planet toward which the escape capsule had headed had already been identified. It was in galactic sector ZZ9 plural Z Alpha. Zaphod found a small speaker by the tank and turned it on. The man in the yellow liquid was babbling gently about a shining city on a hill. He also heard the official from the Safety and Civil Reassurance Administration issue instructions to the effect that the missing escape capsule contained a ray gun, and that the planet in ZZ9 plural Z Alpha must be made perfectly safe.
The story ends here. Or rather, you end here for tonight. Because the tale can keep wandering on its own, quietly, without needing you to follow it anymore. You've listened long enough. You've drifted far enough, and now there is nothing left for you to do. Just breathe. Let the last of the words fade into the background, like lights slowly dimming in a distant corridor. If any sounds remain, waves, hums, soft shifting air, you can let them rock you gently as if you're floating somewhere safe and warm between waking and dreaming. Your thoughts may continue for a moment or not at all. Either way is perfect. Notice how heavy your body feels now, how the stillness deepens with each exhale, how your mind softens, loosens, quietly untangles. Nothing needs to be remembered. Nothing needs to be held. You can release it all, and as you settle into this softness, you might feel yourself drifting into the kind of sleep that arrives quietly and carries you deep into long, warm hours of rest. Let it happen. The night will take care of you. The dreams will wait for you. And when morning comes, you will wake refreshed, unburdened, and gently renewed. For now, just sleep, just breathe, just drift, all the way down. Good night.